WTF? Me and my affair prank called my husband, but he somehow found out and took brutal revenge. Hey Reddit, I never thought I would be on here sharing my story, but here I am. I've always seen people post stuff on Reddit and never really imagined I would be one of those people, as I'm not one for airing my personal life publicly. But I'm in a crazy situation and could use some outside perspective, so here goes. A little background before I dive into the main thing, just so you guys can understand my situation better. I've been married to my husband Mark for about 6 years now. We met in high school and have been together ever since. When we first got together, things were pretty amazing. Mark is one of those guys who goes all out for his partner. He's incredibly romantic and always thoughtful. We had a great start to our relationship, and life felt like a fairy tale. I won't go into too many details about us for privacy reasons, but Mark earns really well and is the primary breadwinner in our household. On the other hand, I have a job, but it's more of a passion project than a necessity. I work because I enjoy it and it keeps me busy, but it doesn't compare to Mark's income. So while I do contribute financially, it's not a major part of our household's finances. Initially, things between us were perfect, or at least it felt that way. Mark was always surprising me with romantic gestures, and we genuinely enjoyed each other's company. But as time went on, things started to change. The excitement began to fade, and we found ourselves growing apart. It wasn't immediate, but over time, the spark that once made our relationship so vibrant began to dim. As time went on, I started to feel a growing sense of boredom and restlessness in my relationship with Mark. Even though he was still the same old romantic person he'd always been, pouring his love and attention into our relationship, I found myself drifting further away. Mark was still incredibly affectionate and thoughtful, but I just couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Mark and I had been together since high school, and he was essentially my first and only serious relationship. We grew up together, and he had been my rock through so many stages of life. But I couldn't help but wonder what life might be like if I had explored more. The thought of it stayed in the back of my mind, and it started to consume more of my attention. I loved Mark deeply, but the spark that once made our relationship so vibrant seemed to have dimmed. It wasn't that I didn't care about him or appreciate everything he did for me. It was more about the sense of familiarity and boringness that had begun to set in. The excitement that was once in our relationship had faded, and I was starting to have a nagging curiosity about what else was out there. Mark and I just had too much familiarity. I started to question if I was missing out on experiences that might make me feel more alive or fulfilled. I mean, despite my love for Mark, I felt like I was stuck in a room, and the idea of exploring beyond our marriage started to seem more appealing. Like I said before, Mark and I had been together since high school, which means we had spent a significant portion of our lives growing up together. He was the only person I had ever been with, and I felt like I needed something different. That was when I met Vince. I met him at the gym, and we hit it off. We started off as friends. I didn't have, and still don't have, many friends, so I was eager to make a new one. We started chatting, and we immediately began talking a lot, to the extent that Mark even started noticing. I was always on my phone, always chatting with Vince, and I became more protective and secretive about my phone. Honestly, I'm surprised that Mark didn't call me out or confront me about it sooner. Vince and I had such a connection. Things just flowed easily between us. We chatted for a while and then we started hanging out, not just at the gym, but after. We'd grab drinks or go to the movies, just spending more time together outside of our usual gym routine. We had this connection that I can't fully explain. Please don't judge me, I know the comments will probably be harsh, but in the beginning it felt like we were soulmates or something. It was so natural, like we were meant to be, and the more we hung out, the closer we got. Eventually, one day, while I was at Vince's house watching a movie, we finally crossed the boundaries we had promised ourselves we wouldn't. We slept together. Yes, I know. I was wrong. I cheated. I've told myself that a million times, and I regret everything. But after that, Vince and I started having an affair, and honestly, I loved how exciting it was. It felt like a spark had been reignited in me. I didn't feel the same familiarity with Vince that I always felt with Mark, and that was exhilarating. But it didn't take long before Vince started showing his true colors. He became extremely possessive, to an almost unhealthy level. He began making absurd and outlandish demands, like insisting that I stop being intimate with my husband entirely. He wanted me to distance myself from Mark, pushing me to prioritize him over my marriage. Vince constantly sought validation, asking me over and over if he was better than Mark. It was like he had this weird obsession with competing with Mark, even though they had never met. At first, I found his possessiveness kind of flattering. I thought it was cute in a twisted way that he cared so much, but over time it became suffocating and infuriating. He was always looking for some sort of confirmation from me, always comparing himself to Mark. He would talk down about my husband constantly, and he needed me to assure him that he was the better man. And I did. I stupidly fed into his ego, telling him what he wanted to hear because I thought it was harmless. I figured Mark would never know, so what was the harm, right? But that's when Vince came up with the stupid idea of the prank call. One day, while I was with Vince, he came up with this stupid idea of playing a prank on Mark. At first, I wasn't really interested. I thought it was childish and cruel, but Vince was becoming more and more controlling lately. He had started threatening me with telling Mark about our affair if I didn't do things his way. I felt trapped. I didn't want to upset Vince because I feared what he might do, so I reluctantly went along with it. Vince made me give him Mark's personal number. I remember hesitating, feeling a pit in my stomach, but Vince was insistent. He dialed Mark's number, and when Mark picked up the phone, Vince faked this exaggerated, high-pitched voice, pretending to be Mark's deceased mom. Now, Mark had just lost his mom a few months back. It had been a devastating loss for him, and he was still mourning. Hearing someone pretend to be his mom would have been an emotional blow, but Vince didn't care. He thought it was hilarious. He started talking as if he were Mark's mom calling from heaven, saying ridiculous things, laughing the whole time. Mark, of course, quickly realized it was a prank and hung up, but I could only imagine how hurt he must have been. Vince kept laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world, but I felt horrible. I knew it crossed a line. Mark had been distant from me for a while, especially after my affair started, and I could tell he was hurting in more ways than one. Losing his mom was a big blow, and I hadn't been there for him in the way I should have. We had grown so distant, to the point that I couldn't even remember the last time we had shared a moment of intimacy or said "I love you" to each other. I had built up so many walls around me that I had shut him out entirely. I thought the prank would be a one-time thing, a stupid, cruel prank that would be forgotten in time. For a while, nothing seemed to come of it. I tried to push the guilt aside and continue with my life, but Vince's behavior only worsened. He became even more possessive, constantly demanding my attention and validation. He even started asking for money, threatening to expose our affair to Mark if I refused. I felt trapped, like I had no way out. I couldn't believe how far things had spiraled out of control, but I didn't know how to fix it. Then a few days ago, everything came crashing down. I had gone to hang out with Vince, but when I got back home, I found all of my things dumped on the front porch. My heart sank. I was in complete shock. I called Mark and he came outside, but only to take the car key from me. He didn't say much, just that we were done and getting a divorce. He told me I could go be with Vince since I apparently cared more about him. His words cut deep, and I instantly felt the gravity of what I'd done. I started crying and begging him not to end things. I didn't want to be with Vince, not anymore. He was controlling, manipulative, and honestly, I was terrified of him. If it weren't for the fact that he was blackmailing me, I would have ended things a long time ago. I had wandered outside of my marriage, thinking I'd find something more exciting, something that would make me feel alive again. But instead, I found myself in a nightmare. I realized that what I had with Mark was far more valuable than anything Vince could offer. I loved Mark, but I had been stupid enough to let my boredom and Vince's manipulative behavior get in the way of that. I begged Mark to take me back, but he wouldn't listen. He told me it was over for good, that I had betrayed him in the worst possible way. I was devastated. Desperate, I called Vince, thinking maybe he could pick me up, but when I told him what had happened, he just laughed and hung up on me. I was completely alone, with nowhere to go. I ended up calling a friend I hadn't spoken to in a long time. She agreed to let me crash at her place for a week while I figure things out, but the clock is ticking. It's already been 3 days, and I'm panicking. I don't know what to do. Everything happened so fast, and I wasn't prepared for any of this. I know I was wrong. What I did was terrible. But is there any way to save my marriage? Can Mark ever forgive me for what I did? Update. Hey Reddit, I expected backlash. I'm not going to lie and pretend I didn't see this coming. Reddit can be a brutal place, and now I've experienced that firsthand. I've gotten a lot of DMs and comments, horrible ones to be honest, and at this point, there's nothing I haven't heard. But I guess it's fine. I deserve some of it. This update doesn't really have a proper update. I'm mostly just using it as a way to rant because I'm so tired. How the fuck does your life go from being decent to a complete disaster in literal weeks? One moment I was in my home with my husband, my life seemingly stable, albeit with a few cracks I tried to ignore, and the next, everything fell apart. Like I said in my last post, I had been staying with a friend. She said she could only accommodate me for a week, which I thought was fine at the time. Well, it's been more than a week. She kicked me out and now I'm couch surfing when I can find a place, and sometimes even staying at homeless shelters. Homeless shelters. How the hell did my life come to this? And now I've lost my job. My life is in literal shambles. It feels like everything is crumbling all at once and I can't catch a break. I reached out to Vince thinking that maybe, just maybe he could help me out, accommodate me, or at least offer some support. But of course, he's nowhere to be found. He hasn't reached out since everything fell apart. It's like he just disappeared, like I was nothing to him. I trusted him, and now I see him for what he truly is, a manipulative, devilish person. I can't believe I ever let him into my life, let alone let him ruin everything I had. He abandoned me when I needed help the most. I was stupid to think he'd ever care about me beyond what he could use me for. I feel disgusted that I ever thought Vince could be an option. But now, with nowhere to go, I'm left to fend for myself. Yep. To make matters worse, I'm starting to think that my husband, Mark, might have had something to do with me losing my job. He's connected, and I know he knows people who have influence over my career, my boss included. It just seems too convenient that I would get fired out of nowhere for so-called low work performance, which is absolute bullshit. I've always been a hard worker, and my performance has never been in question before. It feels like a setup, like Mark's way of punishing me beyond just ending our marriage. As if being homeless and abandoned by everyone isn't enough. Now I'm also unemployed. I've been trying to reach out to Mark, begging him to talk to me, to at least hear me out. But he's ignoring me. No calls, no texts, nothing. I'm completely shut out. It's like I don't even exist to him anymore. And to top it off, he's told everyone about my affair, and I mean everyone. My entire world now knows about my infidelity. Friends, family, co-workers. It's humiliating. My parents, who are ultra-conservative, are furious. They've disowned me, saying I'm going to hell, and that I've committed an unforgivable sin. They've cut all ties with me. My siblings? They want nothing to do with me either. I'm practically an outcast. They say that cheating was bad enough, but that prank was utter cruelty. Yes. Mark told them about the prank, to garner extra sympathy, I'm sure. It's terrifying how fast your life can spiral. Just a few weeks ago, I had a home, a job, a marriage. Flawed, yes, but it was mine. Now, I'm homeless, jobless, hated by my family, and completely alone, ranting to strangers on the internet because I have nowhere else to turn. How did I screw up this badly? Where did I go wrong? I feel like I'm drowning, and there's no one left to pull me out. I don't know what to do anymore. Update. Hey Reddit, I get it. You all hate me. I've read the comments, the messages. You think I'm a miserable cheater who deserves every shitty thing happening to me. You think I'm dumb, pathetic, whatever. I've heard it all. So can you all just stop for a second? Please? I'm already living in a nightmare. You don't have to keep reminding me of it. So here's the thing. I was right about my husband having a hand in me getting fired. I called him today. Unfortunately, I didn't record the call because in my state, it's illegal to do that without permission. I didn't even think to record it because my brain is a complete mess right now. Anyway, my husband called me, asking where I was because apparently I'm about to be served with divorce papers. I told him my location, and then we started talking, and I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I confronted him about my job loss, and guess what? He admitted he had a hand in it. He didn't even try to deny it. But that wasn't all. He also admitted that he had a hand in getting Vince fired. That threw me completely off. I didn't even know Vince was unemployed until my husband said it. I was shocked. I cussed my husband out, called him all kinds of names, but he didn't care. He just said I deserved everything for cheating on him and for playing such a cruel prank about his mom. When I asked him how he found out about the prank, how he knew Vince and I were behind it, he wouldn't tell me. It's like he's got eyes everywhere. I just don't get how he figured it all out. After the call ended, I hit Vince up to see if it was true, and yeah, he confirmed it. He's been laid off. He was pissed when I told him my husband had a hand in it. Vince started going on a rant saying he was going to confront Mark, that he was going to do all this crazy shit, maybe even get the police involved. But honestly, I know he's just talking. Vince is all bark and no bite. What evidence does he even have? He talks big, but I don't see him actually doing anything about it. And let's be real, Vince was a lazy worker when we were together. His bosses probably had plenty of reasons to let him go. My husband probably just sped up the inevitable. Meanwhile, I'm at my breaking point. I've been begging my parents to let me come home, telling them I'll do whatever they want. I'll go back to church, get baptized, repent, never cheat again. Whatever it takes to get off the streets. I'm tired of couch hopping. I look like a damn hobo at this point, and I'm flat out broke. I haven't even eaten a proper meal in days. I don't know how my life spiraled so quickly. One minute I had a home, a marriage, a job, and now this. I honestly don't know what to do anymore. Every day is a struggle. I'm just trying to live one damn day at a time, and even that is hard. Update. Hey Reddit, it's me again. A lot of you have been messaging me asking for an update, even though there's not much new to report. So I thought I'd fill you in on what's been happening lately. I'm still reaching out to friends and begging them to let me stay with them. It's been tough. Thankfully, my mom seems to be softening a bit. She's been calling more often and checking up on me. I think she might be trying to convince my dad to let me come back home. I've been pleading with them, telling them that my actions were a mistake, that I was under some kind of devilish influence, and that I'm truly remorseful and won't repeat my mistakes. It seems like they're buying into my apologies and might be considering taking me back in. I'm also still job hunting, which is proving to be incredibly difficult. The job market is brutal right now, and finding a decent position feels nearly impossible. Every day feels like a battle, and I'm starting to lose hope. On a more serious note, I've been served with divorce papers. This is no longer some bad dream or joke, this is real. The man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with has completely cut me out. It's been a week of numbness for me. I don't know how to feel or react. I don't think I've fully processed everything yet. I'm just emotionally exhausted and detached. In a bit of ironic twist, Vince is now struggling to find a job too. Despite being highly skilled in a field where jobs are usually plentiful, he's hitting walls everywhere. Vince thinks that Mark might be sabotaging his job prospects. It sounds outlandish, but considering Mark's connections and influence, it's not entirely impossible. Vince reached out to me, complaining and ranting about his situation, but honestly, I couldn't bring myself to care. When I needed support the most, Vince abandoned me without a second thought. Why should I listen to him now or offer him any sympathy? So that's where I'm at right now. Still struggling, still feeling the weight of my mistakes, and trying to navigate through this mess. Thanks for all the support and messages, even if they are a bit harsh. Update. Hey Reddit, sorry I haven't updated in a while. Life has been pretty hectic, and I've had a lot to deal with, which is why I've been putting off posting. It feels like I'm closing a chapter, and honestly, it's hard to find the words. So, here it is. The divorce is finalized. Mark and I are officially done. It's surreal and heartbreaking to think that the end of our marriage seemed to bring him relief. Was I really that awful? I know I made mistakes, and the prank was inexcusable. It's just hard to deal with how final everything feels. In terms of the legal stuff, I didn't get any spousal support or assets. Cheating is a serious issue in my state, and it severely impacted my rights. We didn't meet the time requirements for spousal support or any financial settlements, so I walked away with nothing. It's a hard pill to swallow, especially given the emotional storm I'm dealing with. On the brighter side, my mom managed to convince my dad to let me move back in with them. I moved in about a month ago. My life has shifted significantly. I now have to attend church with them every Sunday and get baptized. The church activities aren't as terrible as I feared. I'm trying to stay positive and find a new routine, and I'm slowly adjusting to being back at home. I'm still on the job hunt, and it's been rough. I've heard rumors that Mark might have used his influence to sabotage the job market here. It's a small town, and given his connections, I wouldn't put it past him. As for Vince, he's left town. He couldn't find any work despite his skills and became increasingly paranoid about Mark's supposed interference. With mounting bills and no income, he finally decided to leave. Honestly, I'm relieved he's gone. Rebuilding my life is a slow process. At least I'm not homeless anymore and begging for a place to stay. I'm working on mending my relationship with my siblings little by little. It's not easy, but it's a step forward. I'm trying to stay focused on moving ahead and finding stability again. Thanks for all the support and advice you've given. It means more than you know.